Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan Ennis Pierce. This is the US elections update special, whatever you want to call it, a look at some of the polls that have come out recently that I think are incredibly significant. They've been widely reported by poll watchers and other channels that I'm sure most of you have seen already, but I thought I'd chip in myself. This is good news. I think there's some really good points of news here for Kamala Harris and her campaign. However, there was an attempted assassination on Donald Trump in the last 24 hours, and that will have, one might think, potentially a significant impact on the polls. Although there's also a school of thought that is, it won't have that much of an impact. The previous one had a negligible impact, although that happened, and then the Harris and Biden switcheroo took place that really took over the news and took the wind out the sails of Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump is trying to capitalize upon this, and I mean that very precisely, capitalize. He's trying to make capital out of the assassination attempt yesterday. And I'm not, it's a terrible thing to try and assassinate a political leader in a free and fair democratic country. It absolutely should not be happening. However, he is trying to sell some assassination trainers or something. It just blows my mind. Anyway, that's him. What we have seen are a number of both national polls that are showing a consistently good political landscape for Kamala Harris. But we're also seeing polls in not so much battleground states. We are seeing those, but a couple of other indicators from a few states we might not otherwise look at that show some really significant shifts. So if you look at 538, the polling average is 2.6, I think at the moment, 2.7 is it? 16th, 2.7, so it's ticked it back up a little bit in Harris's favour on the average. It has been getting a bit closer, but than it was at the height of the post-DNC, Democratic National Convention. We're sort of post 3%, almost up to 4% difference, as Harris took over from Biden, shoved the Democratic averages up and Trump's averages dipped a little. Now they've narrowed a little bit, but we are seeing consistent polls in favor of Harris. So if you just look at the latest polls on 538 for the general election, like Harris is winning virtually every single one. You have to go to some Atlas Intel, sorry, I don't know who they are, to be honest, so it could be a bit of a minor pollster, but essentially almost all of these are blue numbers, and a lot of them are above the margin of error. So I think this signifies a bit of a change. Again, assassination attempt notwithstanding. So in general terms, as in general election terms, it looks pretty good for Harris at the moment. But we know that actually winning the most votes in the US does not necessarily win you election. In fact, arguably, the election hasn't been won for the Republicans in that way for an awful long time. So when Trump won, he didn't win the popular vote against Hillary Clinton. She won the popular vote by a good couple of million, but he got the votes in particular places, such as these, you get these important battleground states. So this is the present Real Clear Politics electoral map. As they see it, they think that Harris and Walz have 221 electoral college votes, Trump and Vance have 219, but 98 of them are toss-ups that they can't call quite yet. So you've got Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, you've got North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, as well as New Hampshire in there, and Nebraska district, 2nd district. So all of those are too close to call. So you can see it's an incredibly tight race. Many people at the moment saying it's all about Pennsylvania. You win Pennsylvania, you win. I think it's so. Does Nate Silver have it as something like if Trump wins Pennsylvania, he's got a 96% chance of winning the general election. If Harris wins Pennsylvania, a 92% chance. So both of them overwhelmingly likely to win the whole election if they win Pennsylvania, as according to his analysis. But there's a couple of polls that have come out that have been very, very worrying for the Republicans. The first one that came out was the Alaska poll. So Alaska in the 2020 election was 10 points for Trump. He won Alaska by 10.1. In 2016, he won Alaska by 15.2. So already we have seen a significant shift from 15.2 down to 10.1. And Alaska, a seeming like stronghold since, 1964, 1968, one of those, hasn't been won by Democrats since then. An absolute Republican stronghold, but it's been chipped away over the last decade. Well, the most recent poll is particularly worrying for the Republicans. So if we do Control F and put in Alaska, we can see that the Alaska Survey Research poll had Trump winning by 5. Now, this is particularly worrying because not only does it look like, as it stands, Trump has lost another 5%. So over the last 8 years, you've seen a shift from 15% to 5% in favor of the Republicans there at the presidential election. That is just not good for the Republicans. But also, it's worth noting that this survey is an incredibly accurate one as well. So this Alaska survey is a good survey. So we can be fairly confident that that's an accurate appraisal of where Alaska sits at the moment. Now, Alaska at the congressional level has changed to ranked choice voting, and that has given, what is it, Mary Poltava, I think that's her name. She won against Sarah Palin recently, and that was a surprise. You got a Democrat lawmaker in place in Alaska, so things are shifting. Is this reflective of a national shift? Or is this an Alaska thing? I don't know, but that was the first really worrying sign in the last week or so, as far as the polls were concerned. That was September the 11th to 12th. That one. Now, the more recent one to that is the Iowa poll. So we'll look out on the map at Iowa. Go back to where it stands at the moment. Iowa is here. As you can see, in 2016, it was a 9.5% win for Trump. In 2020, an 8.2%, so a bit of a chip away from that. I mean, it used to be seen as a bit of a battleground state, but not really anymore. However, the recent poll, and it's worth noting that this is an incredibly accurate poll. So the Des Moines Register and Seltzer, the Des Moines Register, is essentially the best poll there is. Has been super accurate for like a decade. It was absolutely on point, I think, in the last election. The previous one, 1% off, or anyway, very good. I think they only poll in Iowa, so it's just a very Iowa poll. But it shows Trump up by 4. Now, that may look good to someone who doesn't know their polls, but being up by 4 in Iowa, only up by 4, shows a really big swing. And so lots of people, like, for example, Let's Talk Elections says, this is an absolutely stunning Iowa poll. And this is what he has to say.
But as of now, this is our only data point in the state of Iowa, and it actually is a very fascinating one. I want us to really understand what this actually means when it comes down to a 4-point advantage for Donald Trump in the state of Iowa, because I want to take a look at what an electoral map would look like with a universal shift given the data points we're getting out of Iowa. Now, I will say this.
And he's just going to say this. Don't assume that a universal shift across the country is at all what would happen. Just because there's a shift in Iowa does not mean there's going to be a shift everywhere.
I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think we're in a position where, because Iowa's 4 points, it means that every other state's going to be shifting by the exact amount. But keep in mind, back in 2020, this is a state that we saw Democrats lose to Donald Trump by nearly 9 points. And so you're talking about at least a 4-point shift. And for the sake of giving Republicans some level of support, we're going to say a 4-point shift is really fair to look at it this way. This is, of course, not my prediction, but just humoring it for a moment to really understand why this is a bad position for Republicans. And so with a 4-point advantage for the Democratic Party based on the 2020 numbers, what it does, it turns states like Colorado into safe blue, makes some states even more likely for the Democratic Party, states like New Hampshire and Minnesota and Virginia and New Mexico. And what it also does, too, to some of these battleground states, it doesn't mean Democrats win Iowa. Of course, they're down in Iowa. It doesn't mean they win Ohio. But what it does mean is they win states like Florida very narrowly. It means they win states like North Carolina. It means they win states like Georgia. They win states like Pennsylvania by likely margins. They win Michigan by a likely margin. They win Wisconsin, right? They're winning in Maine's 1st district and Maine at large by safe margins. They're winning in Nebraska's 2nd by likely margins. They're winning in Arizona. They're winning in Nevada by a likely margin. This shift across the country does really good things for the Democratic Party, and that's why this should really concern Republicans. Because it means here, if they're working in a scenario like this is the electoral map they're working with. They're working with one that is, far less likely to vote for the Republican Party, just simply based on what this national shift shows, that, Republicans just don't seem to be winning it in the same way they used to. Don't seem to be winning Iowa in the same way they used to. It would make Ohio a likely state, right? And that's not things Republicans want. And so when we're taking a look, too, at our national standpoint here, this is what Ann Seltzer essentially would be predicting, assuming a universal shift nationwide. What we know is this country doesn't work that way. It's not as simple, right? The country isn't shifting 5 points to the left compared to the last election, or 4 points to the left compared to the last election. That's not really what we've been seeing. In fact, in some cases, Kamala Harris has been underperforming Joe Biden's performance, and in some cases, outperforming, but never by 4 points across the state. It is just a data point in a wide range of data points, but it's a very accurate one with a really strong track record, which means Republicans need to get something together. It also could be a regional thing. We've started to see data points out of Wisconsin showing Kamala Harris with 3 4-point leads in this state. Why does that matter? Joe Biden only won Wisconsin by under a percentage point, right?
And that's, when you're trying to build a picture of what's likely to happen, if you see a significant shift in Alaska, significant shift in Iowa, and you're starting to see some of these battleground states, Harris outperforming Biden, then all other things remaining equal, this is really good news. And this is why some of the markets are saying that she's got a 60% chance of winning now. But of course, there was an assassination attempt, and we don't know what effect that will have. You've got October surprises. There's a long time still to go until election day, as there's still so much movement we can expect to see. But it just all other things remaining equal, these indicators are good for Harris. Yes, she needs to pick up with her interviews and go outreach, do this big outreach to the general public, still introduce herself, get them to know what she's all about, answer the doubters on things like the economy, etc., etc. Yes, all those things are going to be taking place, but they've got a massive war chest, like $1 billion to spank on all sorts of adverts. I don't know how much in total, but my goodness, they're just raking it in at the moment in comparison to the Republicans. So this allows them some elbow room to, I think it allows people who want Harris to win a little bit of confidence that was just not there some months ago when Biden was still in a race. You have got blue numbers all over 538. Something is happening. It is definitely the case that there's been a shift towards Harris and away from Trump. Lots of people are commenting that there aren't these lawn signs for Trump to the degree there was in a previous election, an election before that. There are lots of rumors that people are getting a little bit fed up with Trump, and people are moving away. I was listening to the Mark Cuban interview on Brian Tyler Cohen, and he was saying, I know a bunch of tech bros. So the tech bros are skewed massively towards Trump. People like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, etc., etc. But he's saying, I've spoken to some of them, and a few of them are not going to be voting for Trump anymore. Like he was saying, like, I'm in the know, and there are people moving back away from Trump. Now that's an anecdote, but we are hearing this in quite a few different contexts from quite a few different places, and you start to piece together this picture that gives us a sense that Trump is up against it at the moment. He didn't do well in the debate. The RNC was not nearly as good as the DNC in terms of production, in terms of viewership, in terms of money generated, in terms of excitement generated. When you got Lil Jon and bouncing music inside this huge DNC glitzy thing that's attracting the television viewer, the kind of independent or the not bothered turns that on and thinking, oh, hang on, yeah, I can get on board with this. And then you saw what's happening at the RNC. You had Hulk Hogan and Kid Rock. These are decades out of being in vogue, and it's a very staid kind of event. And it's all about generating enthusiasm and getting people like Taylor Swift on board with the endorsements, and possibly Beyonce, to certainly allow them to use the music, and appealing to this wide umbrella of people by getting 200 Republicans, lawmakers and people of previous administrations, and etc., to endorse Harris, to get some really big names like Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney. Who would have thought they would be endorsing a Democrat? Goodness, trying to get this unifying approach to their ticket to winning the presidential election, to campaigning, appeal to the centre ground, appeal to the other side, reaching across the aisle, solidify the base. All of this appears to be happening, and the amount of money that they're generating, fundraising, reflects a sense of excitement, and also reflects the chance of winning that people now see Harris having. You don't start backing a horse that you're not very confident is going to win. People like to back a winner, and the money is coming in because people are sensing that she has a chance. So all of this is almost a self-perpetuating, excitement-generating machine. And Trump at the moment is flailing in comparison. It's going to be interesting to see how the assassination affects polling numbers, and whether he will get a kind of rally round a flag effect. I don't know that he will hugely. I think the way that the Harris campaign is doing this targeting campaigning and targeting advertising at the moment, I think is fairly sensible. And they have, as mentioned, more money to throw at these kinds of things. And so it's looking much better for Harris than it previously was for Biden. That much is certain. It'll be interesting to see if she can maintain this above the margin of error advantage that she's enjoying, not everywhere, but in a number of places and in a number of general election polls. I mean, just look at this huge YouGov poll, +4, +5. You got ABC News, +5, +4, +6, +6, depending on Ipsos, ABC, depending on what you're looking at, etc., etc. But this is all good news for Harris. I wonder whether it will be the next time I speak to you on this topic. Anyway, that's enough from me. Take care, guys. Speak soon.